I'm not writing this to entertain anyone. I'm writing because if I had followed the app's instructions to the end that night, I wouldn't have come back to tell you. I didn't ignore any rules. I didn't improvise. I didn't do anything outside of protocol. Even so, someone managed to take me off course without even touching the truck. And the system still said everything was fine. The delivery was short and unglamorous. A load of cleaning products leaving a distribution center on the outskirts of Columbus and going to a smaller warehouse near Wheeling. Nothing refrigerated, nothing dangerous, nothing that warranted extra attention. I accepted because I needed 2 clean trips to recover my rating on the platform. Anyone who drives for ride-sharing apps knows, when your rating drops, support becomes a wall and the work disappears. In the courtyard, I went through the whole ritual. QR code on the gate, photo of the seal, photo of the inside of the trunk, time recorded. The app responded, trip started as planned, and opened the map. A banner also appeared saying that the route would be monitored in real time. I believed it. And that's what left me vulnerable. The first change came across as completely normal. Optimization applied, route adjustment due to traffic. There was no red alert, no sound, nothing dramatic. Just the map arrow redrawing the path and a large confirm button. The maintain route button was smaller, gray, as if I were stubborn for preferring what I already knew. I confirmed. The detour didn't seem suspicious. The exit was well marked, the asphalt was good, 2 lanes, no dirt road. The app guided me with that neutral and polite voice. Every few minutes I received short messages that seemed like confirmations. Route validated, SLA preserved, time within expectations. It worked like anesthesia. I stopped comparing it to the old route and just obeyed. Gradually, the surroundings changed. Traffic became infrequent. The signs began to look old, with worn reflectors, and some indicated only generic directions like local route or industrial access. The shoulder became too wide for long stretches, as if it had been designed for quick stops. I noticed, but I rationalized it. Rural area, early morning, normal. The cell phone signal started to fail in a strange way, not like a complete drop. It was more like a delay. The map would freeze for a second, then jump forward. The telemetry in the corner of the app frequently showed synchronizing. Then came a command that wasn't a suggestion. Reduce speed for operational adjustment. No reason, no context. I slowed down. Out of habit. I tried to open a support ticket, standard screen. You are in a queue. No name, no direct channel, just menu options. I chose route. The response came automatically. Your route is validated. Continue. It seemed like nobody was really reading. It seemed like the support's function was to keep me going, not to help me. Minutes later came the false confirmation that bothers me the most to this day. Route validated, no further action required. At the same instant, another message appeared on top. Administrative stop recommended for seal validation. The two together were contradictory. If there is no further action, why should I stop, and why validate the seal in the middle of nowhere? No human dispatcher would write like that. I tried to open the message history to take a screenshot. The app loaded, flashed, and returned to the map screen. I tried again. Same thing. As if it didn't want to be reviewed. The radio, which I leave on more for company than for utility, started a short, irregular static sound, like a frequency test. It wasn't a conversation. It was a reminder of someone's presence. It was then that I saw the first physical sign. In the right rearview mirror, the side of the trunk reflected the light from my own cabin flashlight, and I saw a small reflective marker near the rear. It looked like a simple sticker, stuck on crookedly without a logo. I hadn't seen it when I left. I always check the trunk because I've had problems with inspections before. And the seal. The seal was intact, but there was a thin scratch near the latch too aligned to be accidental. It wasn't a cut to break it. It was a mark. The app vibrated and delivered the clearest and most absurd instruction. Pull over at the indicated point. Remain in the vehicle. A generic icon appeared on the map. No name, no address, just a point on the shoulder. I looked ahead and saw no gas station, parking lot, lights, nothing. Just a dark road and a wide shoulder. That was the system trying to convince me that that point was a real location. I tried calling the platform's emergency number. It rang and dropped. I tried again. Voicemail. I went back to the app. Processing. Please wait. In queue. It was a prison made of polite responses. In my left rearview mirror, a headlight appeared in the distance and stayed there for too long. It didn't get closer enough for me to identify it. It didn't overtake me to disappear. When I increased my speed by 5 miles per hour, it changed its speed too. It wasn't a coincidence, it was controlled tracking. I understood the trap. No one needed to approach me. They just needed me to stop alone, at the right spot, and stay inside the booth waiting for a procedure. No violence, no witnesses, no clear crime. If it went wrong, the report would show that I pulled over voluntarily. If I complained, the system would have logs showing that the route was validated. I chose to make a mistake on paper. I turned off the app. I cut off my cell phone data. I deactivated the tracker, knowing that this would trigger an automatic penalty. I made the nearest U-turn, even if it wasn't the most efficient, and returned to the main highway where there was enough traffic and light so I wouldn't be the only vehicle at night. The lighthouse behind me tried to follow for a few more minutes, and then disappeared. It didn't pass. It wasn't visible anymore. It vanished as if it had given up when I returned to the real world. When the signal returned, the notifications came in a cascade. Off route, telemetry interrupted, critical violation, unauthorized action. No message asking if I was okay, no human call. Just automated accusations as if I were a malfunctioning machine. I stopped at a large well-lit gas station with cameras, and only then did I get out. The reflective marker was still there. The scratch on the seal was also there. I took photos, recorded video, and got a receipt from the gas station to prove the location and time. I sent everything through the app's ticket system. The response came in less than a minute. Received, awaiting analysis. There was never any analysis. I delivered the shipment with a slight delay. Even so, the next day I received a fine for turning off tracking. Then a warning. 2 weeks later, my account lost priority, and the best freight offers disappeared. The system wrote the official version. I was the driver who broke protocol. There was no field for I was escorted. What destroyed me was realizing that the scheme didn't need to steal anything that night. It just needed to put me in the right place, at the right time, so that I would cooperate. And I almost did cooperate, because I was trained to obey. I thought that, by returning to the main highway, everything would end there. But the system didn't end the story. It tried to rewrite it. Minutes later, with the signal back, the app registered an incident in my name. Unauthorized diversion. Telemetry interrupted. I hadn't even reached the delivery point and I was already being treated as a suspect. Then it suggested a regularization point for me to pull over and reactivate the tracking. The point was a generic icon, the same type of mark that had appeared earlier. No address, no gas station name, just a point on the shoulder of the road. It was the same trap with a different label. I ignored it and went straight to my destination, a small warehouse, one of those that operate with minimal staff in the early morning. At the loading dock, the employee checked the seal with a flashlight and asked, as if he had seen it all along, "Was this mark already there when you left?" He pointed exactly to the thin scratch near the latch. I said I didn't know. He typed something on the tablet and handed me the receipt with an automatic note. External mark on the seal. Audit required. The audit wasn't about the cargo. It was about me. The next day, the platform blocked me for review. I filed a complaint, attached photos of the reflective marker in the seal, explained the signal loss and the contradictory messages. I received automated responses. Files received. Please wait. In queue. When a human finally responded, it was with a phrase that disgusted me. Your route was validated. The interruption was voluntary. It was as if the system had erased the reason and left only the blame. And he really did delete it. In the trip history, the official map appeared corrected. The secondary road no longer existed. The route showed that I stayed on the main highway the whole time, as if the detour had never happened. Without the detour, I became just the driver who turned off tracking for no reason. The platform had a clean record, and I had a story that nobody wanted to hear. Months later, in a closed group of drivers, I saw all too many similar accounts. Different routes, different apps, the same sequence. Optimization, route validated, signal loss, support in a queue, generic order to pull over, request to remain in the vehicle. One guy wrote a phrase I'll never forget. They don't steal the truck. They steal your decision. Today I'm not afraid of people on the side of the road. I'm afraid of nameless messages, of buttons that push you to yes, of automatic confirmations that seem like protection. Because I learned, the hard way, that procedures can also be traps. If you're enjoying these chilling stories, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any more terrifying tales to come. Now, get ready for another journey down dark and mysterious roads. I didn't see anyone asking for help. I only saw that someone wanted me to stop. I hadn't slept enough. I knew it. But I was still in that dangerous state where you feel functional. I'd been behind the wheel for hours, fueled by stale coffee and a sense of urgency that didn't come from the road but from the driver's seat. The freight was short, but the deadline was tight. Sealed cargo, delivery before dawn, payment that wasn't profit, it was relief. 2 overdue installments, insurance to avoid expiration, diesel to get through the week. I was driving to keep everything afloat, not to earn money. The stretch was one of those interstate highway sections that seemed to exist off the map. No towns nearby, no lights, no cell phone signal. The radio was static, the sky was clear and cold, and I hadn't seen oncoming headlights in far too long. When the road is like that, anything out of place becomes a topic of conversation in your head. The first thing out of place was small. A thermal lunch bag was lying on the shoulder of the road upright, with the handle facing the road as if someone had placed it there to be seen. It wasn't torn. It wasn't dirty. It didn't look like it had been dragged. I drove by and thought, it fell off a car. Except the bag was standing upright. And things that fall don't stay upright like that. I kept going anyway. I didn't slow down. I didn't look too closely. The rule I repeat to myself is simple. Don't stop out of curiosity. Curiosity on the road is a tax you pay once and never forget. But the image of the bag stayed with me. It wouldn't leave my mind as something unimportant. It remained a nuisance. Shortly after, the second piece came. A reflective triangle was mounted on the shoulder of the road, but not at the typical emergency angle. It was slightly turned inward, as if it wanted me to see it without having to encroach on the roadway. There was no broken-down car, no hazard lights, no sign of an accident. A triangle without a car is like an open door without a house. It makes no sense. I eased off the accelerator instinctively. It was only a little, but it was enough for me to feel my body reacting. I never liked that feeling. The feeling that someone on the outside had just gained a microcontroller over you. The third thing came before I could decide to ignore it. A pair of thick work gloves placed side by side as if someone had carefully taken them off and left them there. Not thrown, not crumpled, just placed. I looked, and for the first time my mind made the leap that causes trouble. Someone's nearby. Empathy enters like this. It doesn't enter shouting. It enters as an uncomfortable question. And the uncomfortable question that night was simple. If someone is hurt, are you going to walk right past? I hate this question because it sounds moralistic, but on the road, it's practical. What's right and what's safe aren't always the same thing. And in the middle of the night, on a stretch of road with no lights or witnesses, being the right guy can make you invisible. I followed, but I followed more slowly than before. That's when I heard something. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't crying. It was a short, muffled sound like metal lightly touching metal. A repeated, unhurried tap. The kind of sound that doesn't startle you at first, but makes you look around because it sounds like someone trying to get noticed without exposing themselves. I felt my body stiffen. I thought animal. I thought wind. I thought nothing. But the sound came again, almost at the same rhythm, coming from the right side, on the line where the headlight didn't reach properly. That irritated me, because I knew what was happening. My head was trying to solve a problem that wasn't mine. In the side mirror, I saw movement. Not a whole body. Not a face. just a shadow shifting position at the edge of the beam of light, like someone retreating to avoid being seen. I can't tell you the size, the shape, what it was. I only know it was human enough to make my stomach sink. And it was at that moment that I made my first real mistake. I reduced it even more. I didn't stop. But I got too close to the point where stopping becomes just one more second. And just one more second is how you lose the advantage. Something lightly touched the side of my truck, near the tank. It wasn't hard. It wasn't aggressive. It was too light to be an attack and too precise to be accidental. A touch designed to trigger the trucker's most idiotic reflex, checking if something was caught on it. I didn't go down. Not yet. But my mind started doing what they wanted. Considering. Considering is dangerous because you think you're still in control. You think that just thinking isn't responding. But on the outside, someone is reading the timing of your reaction. Someone is interpreting your speed. Someone is waiting for you to decide to be helpful. I turned on the auxiliary headlights and the side cabin lights. I made the road a little less dark. If there's one thing that malicious people hate, it's light. Light creates detail. Detail becomes evidence. And evidence ruins a plan. The sound stopped immediately. The silence that followed wasn't relief, it was a warning. Because silence after encouragement means adjustment. It means someone realized I wasn't going at the pace they wanted. That's when I saw the car stopped further ahead. He was partially on the shoulder in a way that I would have had to pass close to him. He didn't have hazard lights. He didn't have a warning triangle. He had nothing but a dim light inside, like a cell phone screen. When my headlight hit him, the interior light went out. The driver's side door opened a few inches and remained like that, as if someone was ready to get out, but wouldn't leave until they saw my reaction. I felt the scene closing in around me. Cooler bag, triangle, gloves, sound, tap on the truck, stopped car. Each piece was a phrase from the same story. You will stop to help. And this is where many people do what seems right. I didn't. I maintained a constant speed and passed the car without looking inside, without shining a direct light, without showing any sign of curiosity. I wanted to appear indifferent, not out of coldness, for survival. At that same instant, a vehicle appeared behind me. Low beams. Maintain a constant distance. No overtaking. No getting too close. Just following. I hadn't seen that car before. It entered my world the exact moment I passed the stopped car. That's not a coincidence. That's coordination. The problem with coordination is that it doesn't require violence, it requires time. And time is what you lose when you're tired. I didn't accelerate abruptly. Desperation leaves a trail. I also didn't slow down any further. Slowing down was responding to the game. I maintained the pace and looked for the only resource that works against this kind of thing. Witnesses. The next 24-hour checkpoint was more than 10 miles away. 10 miles can be an eternity when you feel you're being watched, and silent observation is the cheapest form of control. I grabbed the CB radio microphone and made a short call, more to myself than to anyone else. I warned about strange signage on the shoulder and said I would continue straight to the next illuminated point. I didn't mention the car. I didn't mention a threat. I just created the idea that my route could be heard, that I wasn't isolated inside my own head. The car behind continued on. The distance was always the same. He wasn't a distracted driver, he was someone with a goal. And the goal wasn't to overtake me. Another light tap struck the side of the truck, this time a little further forward, as if something small had been thrown. Again, too light for damage, too precise for chance. It was persistence. It was a message. I followed. When the gas station lights finally came on, I felt a physical shift, as if my body understood that the math had changed. Lights, cameras, people, a chance for witnesses. I drove past the entrance and circled around briefly before going in, on purpose, just to see if the car behind me would copy me. It did. He entered and stopped in a darker area of the yard, away from the bombs. I parked under the main spotlight near the store entrance where the cameras usually capture license plates and movement. I stayed in the booth for a few minutes, watching. The car in the corner didn't turn off. It didn't open its door. It just stayed there, as if it were still waiting for me to make some wrong choice. More trucks arrived. Traffic increased. I got off. I went into the store, got coffee, and stood near the cashier. I didn't make a scene. Making a scene draws attention in the wrong way. I just mentioned to the clerk that I'd seen strange objects on the side of the road and a car stopped without a signal. He didn't look surprised. He just nodded, like someone who'd heard variations of the same story before. He told me, with a calmness that disturbed me, that stretch of road had a history of clean approaches. No weapons, no shouting, no violence. Just a truck found later, empty, and the driver never located. He said it as if he were talking about the weather forecast. And perhaps that's what struck me most, the normality with which it all happened. When I went back outside, the car in the corner was no longer there. I didn't see him leave. I didn't hear the engine starting, he just vanished. And that silent disappearance, after so much waiting, was the most mature confirmation that it wasn't paranoia. I stayed there longer than I needed to, just to make sure I wasn't being followed. I left with other trucks in the yard, got back on the interstate and kept up the pace until the sun began to threaten to rise. Only then did I feel my body relax. The next day, I tried to calmly reconstruct the trap because I needed to understand it so I wouldn't repeat it. No object was sentimental. No object was something out of a movie. Everything was functional, common, plausible. Cooler bag, triangle, gloves. Things that suggest a worker, suggest routine, suggest a real person. The sound wasn't crying, it was presence. The touch on the truck wasn't an attack, it was a test. And the parked car wasn't an accident, it was a scene. Morale was the weapon. Empathy was the trigger. Since that night, I've changed two things. First, I stop earlier. I sleep more. I don't chase after jobs that require me to negotiate with my own body, because tiredness is like opening a door from the inside. Secondly, I only help with light, context, and witnesses. I don't go down to take a look. I don't collect objects. I don't stop out of guilt in dead zones. If I see something that looks staged, I follow it and report it later, from a place where I exist for someone. I don't know who was out there that early morning. I didn't see a face, I didn't hear a name, I didn't see a license plate. I only know that someone understood one thing about me before I understood it about them, that I was still the kind of guy who shrinks when he thinks someone needs it. And that was almost enough. I've never been the type of person to forget where I put things. In the truck, it becomes almost a religion. So when I returned to the cab and found everything in its place, I felt an immediate chill. It wasn't relief. It was the opposite. Everything being too perfect means someone took the time to tidy things up and put them back the way I like them. I was in my first winter driving alone for a trucking company in Ohio. I was still on probation, being scored for punctuality and unplanned stops. I had become a hostage of the app. If I didn't log correctly, I'd get a warning. If I logged too much, it seemed like I couldn't handle the route. I tried to do everything right, and that was exactly the problem. That night's drive was from Columbus to Memphis, Tennessee, carrying sealed boxes of small parts to a distribution center. The route was I-71 and then I-65, with the idea of switching to I-40 closer to my destination. I had planned to stop at a large truck stop near Nashville to refuel, eat, and take the mandatory rest. The plan was going perfectly, and I was proud of it. The first mistake was starting the evening without checking something simple, the corporate fuel card. I remembered putting it in my wallet, but in the parking lot I changed my jacket, grabbed documents, signed paperwork, and threw everything in the back seat. I left feeling like everything was under control. I only realized the problem when the diesel gauge dropped faster than I expected, and I did the math in my head and saw that I wouldn't reach the planned fuel level with a safe margin. The second mistake was trying to salvage the plan. Instead of accepting a longer stop earlier, I looked for a short, almost invisible solution in the log. I told myself I just had to fill up the tank and keep going, without stopping for a rest. The third mistake came along with it. I trusted the fuel gauge as if it were accurate. It wasn't. That night, every little bit of trust turned into debt. When I was already in Kentucky, a yellow warning light came on the dashboard, critical level in one of the auxiliary systems, the kind you ignore when you're in a hurry. It went off and came back on. It went off and came back on. I got annoyed, as if the truck was getting in my way. I should have read it for what it was, my attention waning. I pulled out onto a sign that promised a travel center a few meters away. On the map, it looked like a regular gas station with truck parking. It wasn't what I wanted, but it was what I had. I convinced myself it would be quick. 2 minutes? Maybe 3. Diesel, and go. The entrance was off the highway, down a short street lined with trees and a curve that concealed the parking lot all the way to the end. When I turned, the light seemed dimmer. Not because it wasn't there, but because it was poorly distributed. Some streetlights were on, others off, creating islands of light and corridors of shadow. There was a main building lit up and a closed workshop next to it. I saw 2 cars parked in the distance, but no trucks. This bothered me, and I ignored it because I had already decided to stop. I pulled over near the diesel pumps, facing the exit. Engine idling, brake engaged, phone in my pocket. I registered it on the app as refueling. Before getting out, I performed my ritual. Door locked, curtain drawn, wallet in my pocket, key on my lanyard. I believed that ritual was safety. When I went downstairs, the air smelled of cold fuel and reheated food. The store was open, lights on, coffee maker running, shelves full. But there was no one behind the counter, no customers, no employees. The TV was playing some program at a low volume, as if the sound was meant to bring the place to life. I stood there for a few seconds waiting for someone to appear. No one did. I went to the ATM to pay for the diesel, and that's when the little twist in my plan came. It asked for my corporate card, and I couldn't find it. I searched my pockets, my wallet, my jacket. Nothing. Irritation turned to urgency. I thought about going back to the truck to rummage through the cab, but I didn't want to leave the truck exposed any longer. I decided to look in the store first, as if the card might have fallen out when I got in. I know how that sounds now. At the time, it seemed logical. That's when I heard the micro-anomaly, a short metallic sound out there by the side of the parking lot. It wasn't loud, it wasn't repeated. A single tap, like a tool hitting a grate. I looked out the shop window and saw nothing but motionless shadows and my truck parked under a pole. The TV kept talking. The ice machine kept vibrating. And I kept pretending I hadn't heard it. I found the card inside the jacket I had folded in the back seat, not in my wallet. I went back outside with it in my hand, thinking only about finishing refueling and getting out of there. The truck was the same. At least that's what I thought. I went upstairs, unlocked it, went inside, and everything was in its place. Too perfect. The backpack was neatly aligned the way I leave it. The document folder had its flap closed. The curtain was fastened with Velcro. I swear I'd left the curtain loose before going downstairs because I liked to close it afterward. It was fastened, and fastened the right way. I stood there not moving anything, trying to find an explanation. Maybe I had locked it up earlier and forgotten. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I was exaggerating. My head tries to save its own calm, but the smell contradicted me. A human smell, damp like clothes stored away after the rain inside my cabin. It wasn't strong, but it was fresh. I looked at the passenger door latch. It was in the locked position, but there was a thin scratch on the plastic part, as if something had scraped it looking for an angle. A scratch that wasn't there before. The kind of mark you don't see unless you're looking for an excuse not to panic. The auxiliary door light flashed and then went out. I didn't even know my model registered that. It was quick enough to seem like my imagination. But in the same second, I heard a faint noise coming from under the passenger seat, like plastic being pressed and snapping back into place. A single sound, then silence. I didn't open the back seat. I didn't get out to look around. I engaged the gear and pulled the truck out slowly, as if I were just changing parking spaces. I only accelerated when I got back onto the highway, and even then I kept my hand on the brake, as if that made any difference. I drove to a large gas station, one of those with bright lights, cameras everywhere, and trucks coming in every minute. I stopped near the entrance where a lot of people passed by and kept everything locked. I called the company's headquarters and explained what I had noticed. Then I called the local police. When the patrol arrived, I didn't need to convince anyone with drama. The officer saw the scratch on the lock, checked the passenger door, and asked me to open the external compartment under the cabin. the one where the warning triangle and some tools are kept. I unlocked it. He opened it, and that's when the story went from being just a feeling to becoming a fact. Inside the compartment on top of my triangle was a folded, unmarked brown envelope. It wasn't mine, and it hadn't been there before. The policeman put on gloves and carefully opened it. Inside were 2 strips of rigid plastic cut to the right shape for locking doors, plus a small packet of clips and tape. No weapons, no film. Practical stuff for someone who comes and goes without drawing attention. The search continued. Underneath the passenger seat, they found the plastic cover slightly out of its fitting. Inside, there was an old cell phone with no apparent SIM card, turned off, wrapped in a sock. It wasn't mine. I never would have imagined looking there because I didn't even use that space. The police officer explained that it could be used as a marker, a way to confirm later if the truck was the same one, if the cabin had been accessed, if someone had tampered with the hiding place. It wasn't about talking to anyone, it was about control. I felt a strange shame, as if the intrusion was my fault. I tried to explain to myself that I had only left for a few minutes. The policeman didn't argue. He just pointed out the obvious. I chose the empty spot and I gave him the time. The rest was the work of someone accustomed to it. They suggested I not go back on the road that night. The truck stayed there under light and surveillance until morning. The next day, another team confirmed that this smaller travel center had already been mentioned in similar incidents. A driver stops for a trivial reason, goes in, comes back out, senses something is wrong, and what appears isn't immediate robbery. It's preparation. It's a test. It's someone positioning a piece of equipment. I lost my weekly bonus. I got an impromptu stoppage notice and a delivery delay because the company preferred to change locks and inspect the cabin before releasing me. That hurt my pride more than my wallet. But the real impact came later. The following week, I requested a copy of the report because I needed to understand exactly what they thought the next step would be. The document described that old cell phone as a verification object. If someone returned to the truck and found the device in the same place, they would know that no one had searched the hiding place. If it disappeared, they would know that someone had noticed. It was a simple way to measure risk without having to touch the cargo. What struck me was the police officer's explanation. This kind of thing works because the driver tries to stay calm. He sees something strange and prefers to believe it's nothing, because nothing delays delivery. The mind makes a deal with fear. The company changed the locks and installed an additional seal on the passenger door. But what really changed was my behavior. I started stopping only in places with real activity, not just lights. I started looking at what's happening, not just what seems to be happening, and I stopped chasing bonuses as if it were a matter of survival. Even so, the worst part came in an observation on the report. The lost card, the intermittent notification, and the ATM demanding the card created a perfect sequence to keep me out of the booth long enough. It wasn't possible to prove that someone had planned it for me, but it was clear that the place was poised to exploit any distraction. I still drive. I still enjoy the road. But now, when I get out of the truck, I come back with the feeling that I owe someone time, and I don't repay that debt. I get in, lock up, and head to a better place even if the app complains. Because I learned the easy way. If you come back and find everything too perfect, it's not luck. It's a sign that someone was patient where you thought you were in a hurry.